Welcome back to the Last Week This Week podcast, episode 69. I'm Ian Scott.
69, dude.
Yo! Oh, shit. Oh, my gosh.
It's crazy. My name is Zack Huber. I'm his co-host. And what is this? What is this thing that we're doing?
This is the podcast where we talk about film and TV topics from the last week, give them to you all this week. And for some reason, we decided to make episode 69 the Disney podcast. So,
yeah.
Why don't you tell us about those topics?
Yeah. So as for our special 69 podcast where we just suck and fuck each other, Disney does, and then we talk about Disney because that's all we seem to talk about sometimes. We are going to talk about Keanu Reeves almost playing Master Soul in The Acolyte. Tamora Morrison basically confirming that he won't be coming back as Boba Fett in Mandalorian and Grogu, the movie that's coming out. How Robert Downey Jr. came to be Doom, as well as Shang-Chi becoming or would have been one of the leads in the Kang Dynasty movie. And James Spader is now confirmed to be coming back as Ultron in the Vision Quest series. And the first thing that we're going to talk about before all of those is a Star Wars problem, situation, thing that came out earlier today or this week, which was that The Acolyte has been canceled by Disney after one season. Wah, wah. I'm not so. If
you listen to our reviews, right.
if you've listened to any of our reviews, you kind of know how we feel about this. But for anybody who hasn't watched The Acolyte, there's probably going to be some spoilers here. But yeah, so can't say I'm surprised.
No. But to be fair, this is the first time I can remember a Star Wars television show like directly being announced as canceled. I don't think that like even Book of Boba Fett, which we will talk about later, has still not been officially canceled.
And so I think it's interesting that they came out and said, no more of this. And so what's interesting about it is this still has like a 70% rating on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics. So it's not that the critics hated this show.
It's the audience didn't buy into it. And they put out that the finale for The Acolyte was the lowest finale across any of their television series in viewership. And for a show that costs $180 million, and we calculated that it was for a runtime of 5 hours and 20 minutes across the entire series, I don't think it made sense in their best interest to keep the show going. Like I said, or like you said, I'm not surprised. And I think I said during our finale review that I would have been a little excited to continue the show if Soul was still involved, and he was like fighting for his honor and his life at the Jedi Council and like his trial or whatever. But they don't have any characters moving forward that I care to follow, and I can't say I'm upset because I really didn't want this show to continue and like keep adding on to the lore they were building off of. So this is a good day in a sense for Star Wars fans like me. But I know there are some fans of the show, and I know that there were some good aspects about this show. Not a ton, but like the choreography was one of those aspects that I think we all were.
The fighting choreography was really some of the best that I've seen in
quite some time.
Probably since the prequels.
Probably. And I hope they don't confuse the poor reception of this show with like everything they did. I hope they take some of the good things from the show and move on into their next. But it's an interesting time, I think, as well for Star Wars, like their television like landscape, because we have these reports that, like most likely Boba Fett season 2 isn't happening.
Yeah.
Most likely there
Obi-Wan.
won't be a season 2 of Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
There won't be another season of Bad Batch because that just ended. There's not going to be a season 4 of The Mandalorian, most likely, because that's now a movie. And so all we have is this show coming out called Skeleton Crew in December, which from what I hear is a limited series that won't have another season after. And then you have Ahsoka, which is your only now running Star Wars show.
Right.
So it feels like they're now trying to make the transition back into movies and maybe leave this kind of era behind them and maybe just stick with Ahsoka because Dave likes to tell that story.
Yeah.
But I can't say I'm upset with this direction. I think if you do what Kathleen Kennedy truly said a few years ago or a year ago, however long that was, where you're like, we're going to make Star Wars event movies again, where they come out every 2 to 3 years and it's an exciting event for people to go to and talk about Star Wars and you're not dulling the overall lore and fan base. You're keeping them excited for what's next. Whereas you oversaturates the fan base, I think, with how many shows you might have put out here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah. So everything that you said, I agree with. And I would like to point out like a few reasons why this show got canceled and was like a definitive cancel. I do think that they are probably moving away from the TV side of things because of everything that you just said. You still have loose ends with Ahsoka, and I still think that there's a strong enough fan base with Ahsoka that like a season 2 is going to happen. It seems
season 3 is possible, if it does well,
because they did mention that at least at one point they mentioned that they were going to tie up all of the, Mandalorian storyline, like this whole section of lore, with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's still the case, maybe we get Ahsoka season 2 before, maybe a little bit after the movie, and then maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm sure they're still going to want to keep some stokes in the fire with Disney Plus, but probably like very limited amount.
I think what is likely is that a season 2 happens next year, and then Mandalorian Grogu comes out 2026, and maybe based off the reception of that, we have one show going forward with this kind of post episode 6 universe in Star Wars. And I think that's enough. I don't think you need to build out multiple shows like they were trying to do at one point and have them all crisscross in between each other. Let's just keep it simple, one path in this small section, and we move on to the next thing for Star Wars. Yeah.
Reason 2, which you also brought up, we started out with a bunch of characters that we were following for this show. I mean, a ton.
A lot. Yep.
And now we've been reduced to all of the characters that really didn't have very strong, I don't want to say arcs, but I think you have one of the most unliked characters in Venestra. Everybody was like, what is this woman doing? Like, she says, go do this thing, and then she lets you go do this thing, and then it keeps happening and happening. You have the 2 twin sisters who are flip-flopping like crazy, and you're like, at least for me, I was like, these characters don't have any sort of strong narrative storyline going. They're just like, oh, my sister's alive. This changes everything. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. And then we have
really bad writing. Yeah.
We have, the Sith, thirst trap, which like
Kamir,
I kind of like, I do like, there's times where I did like him, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, well, I would say really with just one episode for me, which was, the reveal.
Right? Yeah. But they really didn't have, all in all these characters just didn't really feel like I understood the relationship between Camille and now God, I forget her name. Who was the good one turned bad?
May.
No, May was the bad one turned good. Osha.
Yeah.
So like
wow.
I didn't understand Osha's, and Camille's relationship towards the end.
No, it didn't make any sense.
Vanessa now has like this, we're supposed to be like, oh yeah, she had this tie-in with Camille, and now so
that was her old apprentice. And
but all the characters we had following besides these, 4 were all gone, which could have been really bold and interesting, and if it was written differently, absolutely. But all of these characters, I think like the strongest that I felt was definitely towards Soul, was definitely towards like Jackie, and all of those characters are gone, as well as like Yord was
great. Indara I thought was amazing, and her apprentice and Torben. I thought all those characters were really good.
But and like I understand that like some of them had to die, sure.
But now, they all dead now. Right?
But now we're left with these characters that I don't think a lot of people were like, oh my God, I loved May, I loved Osha.
I think the only thing I would have liked to have seen in a season 2 would be building off of like the Darth Plagueis kind of part.
And so like that's the third thing that I would want to bring up is that they hinted at a Plagueis.
They for sure did,
which was equally frustrating because it's like, oh God, why did you have to add this really cool part of canon into this show that obviously didn't pan out the way that everyone had hoped, but it was ended in a way where I think that, to be honest, like money probably talks bigger than canon, but like Lucasfilm was like, hey, like we don't really have to say anything. We can just imply like these characters had a bigger story going on, and like we can all just like make up our own stories in our head about like what ended up happening, because it wasn't that big of a cliffhanger. So it's not like season 2 was like inevitable.
Well, but if you go along with the theories that were presented out there, right, that this could have turned into like Darth Plagueis trying to create life, right, and trying to use like May and Osha as a basis for like his experiments or something. And like, I don't know, I think there was some huge possibilities for why like Plagueis was around. But
I mean,
here's the thing.
I'm just saying like that. This is why I think that it got canceled, and they're like, we don't like, they can continue this if they want, they can continue this story in books, or they can continue this story.
Elsewhere. But I do think it's a big cliffhanger, but I do think they left it vague enough to where like you really have no idea why Plagueis is there and at the end or in the beginning of the episode. And you can just make your own theory, your own headcanon as to why that is. So I agree.
And fourthly, and maybe it wasn't as critically slammed as something like Book of Boba Fett, but the fans just were not having this. And I think like you gotta make them happy, especially when most of your content lately that you've been putting out has been really dividing and upsetting a lot of the fan base. I mean, the last thing that I think a lot of people really liked was Andor, and still that was divisive in a different way because people felt like it was too serious,
too dark, right?
And so and then before that was Mandalorian season 2, like that was like general, like overall everyone was super happy with what was coming out.
Honestly, I think if I think that's like the right balance you need to find again is go back to Mandalorian season 2 where things can still be dark and edgy if you want them to, but you opened up like the Star Wars universe, more so than you did in season 1, where you had the possibility to meet all these different characters that we might know. And so you have a little fun there, and you have a little like of that darkness, or that, that edginess from like Andor or Mandalorian season 1. And you make both sides of the fan base happy there. I feel like that's Mandalorian season 2 like kind of struck gold, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then they moved in a completely different direction for season 3, but yeah, we won't talk about season 3.
And the thing that I would really like Lucasfilm to not take away from this is that it's not that the setting of the show was to blame.
No, definitely not.
And I really hope that like they don't feel like, okay, people don't like New Republic or High Republic. That's not the case. I think it was a cool time period to explore stories.
It was a cool concept too. Like the general concept of the murder mystery was cool. I liked it. But
so I hope that, maybe they do go back to it at some point. I really don't think that we're going to see anything about these characters unless it's in like a book or a comic or
honestly,
or some other form of media.
I would be shocked if we ever hear about Osha or May again. Genuinely.
It does present... I don't want to like linger on this topic like too much longer, but it does present like a problem now. Like
I disagree.
Well, not like Star Wars has always had like loose ends here and there.
Sure.
And maybe we'll go like 10 years and then we'll get something out of it. You know what I mean? But like it does present
this canceled show.
It's I don't know if this has ever happened before in Star Wars where like a live action show or movie or whatever has come out and had such a high, like a big implication of like characters and what they mean to the overall like universe and canon as this show has.
Right.
Where I'm a bit like, well, I am eager to know like what was going on with the whole what was the thing that created them? It was like the
Force dyad or something.
Not the Force. It wasn't a Force dyad. It was it wasn't.
Oh, an incursion or
no inflection point.
I don't remember.
But you know what I'm talking about? Like this huge force, for lack of a better word, that like created the two of them and have split the same person in half, and then Plagueis is involved. Like there's just so many big things that like if you're a casual Star Wars fan, it really doesn't change anything. But for like big Star Wars fans, you're like, well, even though I didn't like the show, like, are we ever gonna like know anything more about this? Because it seems pretty big.
I feel like them canceling it, and I don't know if you saw, but they also like the next day removed all of the like Acolyte merch from their website. I feel like they are eager to move on from this, and I would be surprised to see them try and go back and explain things. I think because it's so separate from so much of the lore, you can really ignore it in a sense.
You can. Yeah. I think I'm just talking from this point as like a fan.
Sure. You're just like, well, there's this loose end that I don't like that there's a loose end.
Like a really big loose end.
I mean, one of the most powerful beings ever presented in Star Wars is just training with Khmer.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't think you would have wanted a season 2, to be honest, to wrap this up.
Not really.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think Star Wars is better off moving in a new direction. I don't think this is necessarily bad news, except for the people involved making it. But yeah, I think the Acolyte had its time and it has come to an end. Yeah. Well, next up for our Star Wars topics here, we also wanted to mention that they had been eyeing Keanu Reeves to play Master Soul originally. And And I think that's so exciting. That would have been so exciting. Like I love I think Lee Jae-sung, who played Master Soul in this season of The Acolyte. I thought he had probably the best performance of anyone on the show.
Well, maybe besides Daphne Keane. I thought Daphne Keane was pretty good.
Agreed. She was pretty great. But I think it would have been maybe even more exciting to. I mean, could you imagine having Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss like back together and like in one of those like, you know, flashback episodes?
Yeah, it would. I mean, it would be cool, but it would also
have been amazing.
It would also, but like we just saw that with like the Matrix Resurrection.
Yeah, but now they're in Star Wars. I don't know. I would have fucking like lost my mind, honestly. And just
like
to
hear him say like, yeah. In Star Wars. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Like I think he has the right presence for like a Jedi Master. And like I feel like the choreography of the show, a lot of it was based on that kind of Matrix style of fighting. You had a lot of martial arts and a lot of fantastical kind of like jumping around and whatnot. And I think they were inspired. And I think
they literally wrote they literally wrote the Carrie-Anne Moss master what was it? Indara. They wrote her with Trinity in mind, like Carrie-Anne Moss in mind.
There you go. Yeah. So, and I don't know. I feel like like I said, the martial arts choreography just adds to it, and seeing those two in action would have been incredible.
Yeah, but now apparently they're interested in casting him in another project,
which is probably for the best, you know.
Yeah,
probably best that we don't have him in this failed show. You know? Yeah,
and also like I think he could have played that character really great. But after watching the performance from the actor who did play Soul, I was like, I don't know. I really like how he did his. Like, I really like Soul.
I do. I
really liked how he played that character, and
Agreed.
I would like to, and I think like Keanu Reeves would definitely play a similar character, but he's got that stoic, like doesn't talk a whole lot sort of. You know, he could be.
I don't think he would have played him too much different from Lee Jae-sung.
I agree, but I don't. And I love Keanu, but Keanu.
Sure, he's himself, right?
Yeah, and he can't. I don't know how much he could have acted
like,
the way
like how much emotion
could
he have brought to it. Sure,
I mean, like Keanu can bring emotion, but you know he's still like Keanu.
No, yeah, but I don't know. Like I really bought into the Soul that we saw and how this affected him.
But I think everybody's wanted like Keanu to be a part of Star Wars for a minute now. So the idea that he is that they're interested in casting him in another project, which like is like, yeah, we'd love to at some point, maybe, you know. Like,
I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised if he is maybe the main character in James Mangold's Star Wars movie. They haven't cast for that yet, and I don't know. I think attaching him to a movie, other than I don't think he'll be in any of the shows that are set for Star Wars. So, I think
shows?
Ahsoka or Andor season 2.
I mean, Andor season 2 is like wrapped.
You're right. So it'd be Ahsoka season 2,
and I just don't see that happening.
Agreed. Yeah. So I think the only other movie that's announced for them is the Daisy Ridley one. So, I mean, I guess he could be in that, but I feel like having him as like the star character, like the main guy, the protagonist, I think that would do well in that. It'd make me way more excited about James Mangold's movie than I am now. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Agreed. I think he'd be great, obviously. I don't know if I'm gonna get my hopes up, because I think they'd be like, yeah, Anthony Hopkins in Star Wars, we'd be interested. You know, like, yeah, we I don't know, who's in Brad Pitt in Star Wars? Yeah, we'd be interested.
Sure, but there's like something about the presence of Keanu Reeves that's a little different, you know?
Yeah. I think if he was to be in something, like, I agree, it would it'd be the James Mangold. I could see him show up in that Daisy Ridley movie.
Yeah, maybe he's an antagonist.
I have my doubts that movie is actually going to happen.
Oh yeah, okay.
I just think we'll see. after all of these that we just talked about, all of these misses, like, do we really want to have one of the most divisive characters?
Come back. Movie? Right. Yeah, where they are the main character, right? Like I really did like Daisy Ridley and Ray in those first two movies, but yeah, the way they wrapped her arc up was not great. So yeah, I get why she's divisive. I don't really want to see another movie after the sequel series, after the sequel trilogy. But I do believe they are, like, the fact that they announced her, brought her, didn't they bring her out on stage at like one of the Star Wars?
I don't know.
I feel I remember maybe, but I could be wrong. I feel like they're gonna make an effort for her, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
No, I mean, they might. Yeah.
But they have canceled a lot of Star Wars movies in the past, so this could be another. Yeah. But yeah, so I think the last piece of Star Wars that we wanted to talk about was all the stuff surrounding the character of Boba Fett. Basically, Tamora Morrison has come out and
he said Boba Fett.
Yes,
for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah. Sorry, assume common knowledge. Apologies. But yeah, so he came out in a couple of interviews, kind of said some things about his character, the state of his character. I know one was that the reception of his character has kind of played into
impacted the future of the character in the franchise.
Yeah. And, but later on it was said that, he couldn't speak on the status of that character being in Mandalorian and Grogu. So that character could still be in it. But yeah, do you have the other quote that
I do? Yeah. So this is from Screen Rant when he was talking during their panel, which was called From Clone Troopers to Bounty Hunters, which I feel like, unless there's something in Bad Batch that I'm not aware of, like, seems like just talking about explicitly that's just alluding to Boba Fett. Like, I can't think of another clone trooper to bounty hunters, unless that's just referencing like the time period of like, hey, we're going to talk about the prequels to,
I think it's more maybe like him voicing from Clone Troopers to his own Boba Fett character.
Okay. Right? So the quote is, I understand they're going to do a Mando with Grogu movie next, and things have changed too. There was going to be a Mando 4. I was going to turn up in that, but as of now, I'm still waiting for a phone call, to be quite honest. I think we're just put on the shelf for a little bit. Maybe we come off the shelf later. And I'm a little bummed about it because as much as I hate Boba Fett, the book of Boba Fett.
Agreed. Yeah.
I really don't like that show. But it's not because I hate the character of Boba Fett. It's because of how they wrote that show and how they decided to do to Boba Fett as a character in that show. And so
character assassination.
He was written really well. And like, yeah, he was basically just space, Star Wars, John Wick. You didn't need to give him a bunch of lines. You just had him do a bunch of badass things. And
you didn't need him to take over Tatooine's crime empire.
And so I do think that it would be, everybody likes Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And I don't think that completely taking him out of something like the Mando movie is like necessary, like unless they don't need him, if they don't need him, then like don't add him. But
but
I feel like, that show definitely hurt his character because a lot of people didn't like it. But I think that there's still room to have him in stuff, just as, not the crime boss of Tatooine, now that that's established that he is, just like maybe go back to being a badass and not being like, I need to make a name for myself and like, but Fennec, what do you think? Like,
yeah, right. But I think like the next time, if he was in it, like we could have like Mandalorian like go back to Tatooine, go to his, go to Jabba's palace and walk up to his throne and it'd be like way more badass than what Boba Fett the show presented.
Just bring him back to being like more silent.
Right. And, I can live with the fact that he's now ruling on like for Tatooine or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta make him more of an intimidating presence.
I agree.
He's got to be Boba Fett again.
But it does seem that look, I don't know where he comes back. If Mandalorian and Grogu movie is like the end,
right?
And there's no more season, there's not a season 4. Which, by the way, if there is a season 4, I will be livid,
shocked. I'll be shocked. Yeah.
But I just don't see where you see him again, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I don't see them doing a Book of Boba Fett season 2.
I don't think they will. I think the only other place you could see him again is if I do believe if the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is successful enough, there will be a sequel, if not a trilogy, made for that movie, right?
Maybe.
And if it does that well, I think he could appear in those movies or movie if there's only one sequel. I don't know. I agree, but there's no other options for him really, unless he gets his own Boba Fett movie, which I can't imagine would be in Disney's best interest. Because
they're not gonna do a Book of Boba Fett movie,
right?
No.
Right. So it seems like the character is pretty permanently on the shelf, which is sad. Because he, as a supporting character, is pretty cool. Yeah. So I would say a bummer and I really love the actor. Like Tamora Morrison, I think he has a lot of passion for Boba Fett. He has a lot of passion for Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it would have been really amazing to have gotten a Boba Fett movie if we had never gotten that show.
Which it should have been a movie.
Oh, they originally were going to do it,
I know.
But then Solo killed all of those spinoff movies. So yeah, just a lot of sad, unfortunate events for that character, and for him to end up here is kind of rough.
Yeah. Would have been cool to see that, his story kind of wrap up or get roped into a movie with Mando. And I'm not, to be honest, with all of the, with Disney lying all the time, with actors and producers lying about them being in stuff, I'm not going to count it out that he shows up in the Mandalorian movie.
It's possible.
But right. I do think it's pretty unlikely.
Agreed. Totally agree. Well, I think that's all the Star Wars we wanted to talk about today. Now we're going to move on to the other side of Disney over at the MCU studios here. Mm-hmm. And we had a kind of report come out about how Robert Downey Jr. came to be Dr. Doom again, or not Dr. Doom, but back in the MCU again. Because he's done that before, right? But yeah, so I don't know. I know you have the kind of quotes and whatnot.
So Robert Downey Jr. was on a podcast. It was the Hollywood Reporters Awards Chatter podcast. And he talked about a bunch of stuff, like him doing that show on HBO. I think it's like The Influencer or something like that, Oppenheimer. And then they talked to him about coming back as Dr. Doom in the MCU. Yep. And basically was recalling this meeting that he had with Kevin Feige with his wife, Susan. And they basically were having a chat with Feige about what they could do to kind of help with the parks. And Kevin Feige basically said, while they were talking about that, it keeps occurring to me, if you were to come back and, they were like, come back as what? And basically, Feige went on to say, how can we not go backwards? How can we not disappoint expectations? How can we continue to beat expectations? And then brought up Victor Von Doom and Downey apparently said, I looked into this character, and he says, let's get Victor Von Doom right. And apparently, like, there was a talk about having Bob Iger already seemed to know about the Doctor Doom idea and quickly told Robert Downey Jr., I like it. Which, like,
of course they like it.
The cynic in me goes, yeah, Robert Downey Jr., MCU, back, money.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I would like to talk about with it is, I have already talked about this on like one of our previous episodes, that I don't think that this is a desperate move. I think that a desperate move is to bring like somebody like Thanos back, is to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as Tony Stark.
Sure.
I think it's
close to desperate, but maybe. I'm not. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but yeah.
Like, because it would be so easy. I'm not saying that this is like, I'm not going to say that this is a smart idea. We'll have to find that out.
Right.
But I don't think that it's desperate, because they are actively doing something that is, first of all, he has to play a completely different character, make it feel as un-Tony Stark as possible.
Yeah. Well, unless that's a Tony Stark variant, but yeah, go on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which the wording on this makes me feel like maybe it's not.
We'll see.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like, yeah, they want Robert Downey Jr. back because he was like the life, blood, and soul of the MCU, and you're going to get people to come back.
Yep.
So, yes, I can understand why people think this is desperate. I'd like to talk about, and this was also, apparently this conversation took place about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
If it's to be believed, which I'm a little inclined to say that it is. I know like 5 months ago, like Kevin Feige was like, yeah, no, I think Robert's time is done. But then around that same time period, Robert Downey Jr. like completely was like, yeah, no, I think I'd be down to come back.
Right. Like they were clearly already, I think, talking about it. They were trying to keep it under wraps.
Yeah. And so like the idea that this was a year in the making, if true, like, makes me feel like a lot more confident about what they're doing. And I don't think that Disney would have been like, in the past 2 months, like, or even a month, like, had this meeting. I think this probably has been taking place for a while. But I do know that a lot of other people are like, no, like, this is desperate, and I get that argument. I just don't. I think it's kind of genius. I don't know if it'll work, but I think it's kind of genius, like, to bring back like I think it's very cool for this universe. Like the person who's like the most is supposed to be like Earth's defender is now like the
most important hero that sacrificed himself so that all of humanity could live is now back, possibly to destroy the entire universe. Right.
If a Tony Stark variant, which
right.
The wording on this of like, let's get Victor Von Doom right, makes me wonder if like, and here's and I think a lot of people are like, okay, it's only going to work if it's like a variant of Tony Stark, which that is, I'm not gonna lie, like, that is the way that I was feeling about it. But
I can't see another reason they would get him back, is all I'm saying. You know?
I do like the theory though that in another timeline, another universe,
right? He's born to different parents or something, and he's
not exactly like I think one of the ideas was like Tony's parents never like moved, or his grandparents never like moved to the US, and so and they didn't feel like they needed to change they felt like they had to change their last name to Stark, so but they kept the Von Doom. So like he's technically born as Victor Von Doom, or like born to like a different family, and like you said, in another country. And if he was to, with makeup and with like a different voice, like I could see him being somewhat unrecognizable from a Tony Stark growing up.
Yeah. I don't dislike that theory. I actually do kind of like. I mean, and I'm sure people would roll their eyes at that like to Stark. You know, his past generation in the family had to change their name to Stark because they immigrated.
Like it. I don't know.
It's the best. It's the best. I think reason for him having the name Victor Von Doom. I think genuinely it is. I do think people, even in that scenario, will be mad that in this conversation that between Kevin Feige and Robert Downey Jr., they are still saying, let's get it right by casting you. I still know there's so many fans who are mad about this, who are mad they're not getting a true Doctor Doom. Sorry, I was just gonna say if they, like you said, if they have been planning on this for a year, they've likely been writing for that character and writing his introduction and the reasons why he exists as this version. I do believe we're going to get a good version of this character, even if it's not the most true version of a character.
Right.
And I think maybe that is what they mean by getting it right. You know?
And I think I would like to say that to a lot of people who are like, well, I want to get the actual version.
Right.
Well, as much as maybe like it wasn't entirely the right version with some of the past movies, you did get at least 3 movies where you had somebody who was born Victor Von Doom.
Yeah, but those weren't the greatest interpretations.
But it was somebody who was born Victor Von Doom and grew up with Reed Richards and went to college with him and had the envy and all that stuff.
Well, I don't know if you can say that about the 2015 version. I don't exactly remember that character.
I don't remember that one that very well.
But I don't remember him growing up with Reed Richards. I'll say that.
Sorry, going to college.
Okay.
Going to college with Reed Richards.
That might have happened. I don't honestly remember.
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
People who like that Josh Trank version would tell us what happened, because I don't know.
I don't think we're gonna get any responses because no one liked it. So.
Yeah, I did not like it at all.
No one did.
So, and we didn't exactly get Age of Ultron the way it was supposed to be. We didn't get
no, but I still really like Age of Ultron. Right.
Like I don't see people being like, well, why didn't we get Thanos who in love with death? Why wasn't his reason for eliminating half of the universe because he was in love with his goth girl?
Right. I think it's so clear at this point that they are not adapting the comics 1-to-1 in this universe, and that it's a completely own story. And so I am at this point okay with them taking liberties with their stories and characters. Not everything has to be a 1-to-1.
Yeah. And I think that now that, because there is a multiverse, I do think that there's a possibility that you get somebody else to play Doctor Doom, but I don't know why people aren't a little bit more excited about the fact that you get an actor like Robert Downey Jr. to play this role. I think it's going to be really cool. Like,
we all just saw him perform his ass off for Oppenheimer. I think we're all like even more in love with him as an actor than we have ever been. So let's give him a shot. Right.
But to the validity of this, I kind of buy it.
Yeah, I buy it. Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that this is something that was just put together
in a couple months before,
before Comic-Con. So I kind of buy it. But then again, this could just be an actor and a producer being like, no, let's just spin it as like, we've had this in the works for like a year and you'll get your paycheck. And I don't know if I completely buy that, but
right. I also feel like this plays into the fact, I believe it because, basically we've been having these kind of rumors and reports of Kang being a significant part of other MCU projects.
Yeah.
That have come out or are coming out soon, like Deadpool and Wolverine and Agatha All Along. And now that those characters aren't even mentioned in those movies, or the Kang character isn't even mentioned in the movie or the show. And I feel like because this was a year ago, those changes were able to be made to these properties that are coming out this year and beyond. and so there is a clear direction for the franchise, which is moving away from Kang and going towards this point of Avengers Doomsday.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, like it being, you know, in the works for a year just makes complete sense.
Yeah. I mean, and they, you know, we had talked about ever since all the Jonathan Majors stuff and the failure of Quantumania, which, when did that come out? 2022?
That was last year.
Was it
2020? It was February 2023. Yeah. So this was a few months, like them discussing this was a few months after the failure of Quantumania.
Yeah. And I think that was pretty directly around the time that all the allegations were coming about with Jonathan Majors. And it's like, well, we had discussed back then, like, it does seem like they're probably going to move away from Kang. And I know you were bummed about that. I mean,
I'm still a little bummed, but yeah.
But like, this is I think this is in line with it because they had to move somewhere. And
I mean, I think they could have recast, to be honest. But if fans were already maybe not like into the character itself in Quantumania, then maybe it was a good decision.
You could have recast, but I think the problem is, and I get, like, I don't want to, we're probably
delve too deep,
right, but like, he wasn't that threatening in Loki.
But I understand, but I thought he had a lot of really good performances in Loki, and the character was really interesting in both of the seasons.
Yeah, but up until that point, it was just Loki, and then we got to see him in Quantumania as like, this is supposed to be, you know, Kang,
right?
And it was like, you got beat by a bunch of ants, and it was a bad movie.
Yeah.
Also, it was just a bad movie.
It's just a bad movie,
and nobody.
One of the worst Marvel movies. Yeah,
nobody.
Probably your least favorite.
It is my least favorite.
Yeah.
And nobody was feeling like, oh my God, this is the next thing. I mean, when the post credits scene came with the Coliseum of Kangs,
you hated
like
that. Yeah.
I think I speak for a good amount of people that were like, what? This is like goofy. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't know.
Kangs be like, yeah, Kang. Oh my, Kang. I'm like, y'all are a bunch of fucking Kangs. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, a football stadium of Kangs.
Like, why would they be so enthusiastic about another Kang that's above them?
And shouldn't they all be like in competition with one another? Like,
I think they should have all at least been you know, composed at least. Like, I think they could have been all like just sitting there intimidatingly.
Yeah.
You know, and
not like we're
about football stadium. Right.
Yeah, not like we're about to play soccer or something.
Yeah. I agree.
And then like
the most
just like a pharaoh looking character. Like, I get it. It's from the comics.
I kind of enjoyed. I did like the really different Kangs coming in and at the end. But I understand. I understand why you didn't like it. It is a little goofy, but it's like Kang is a crazy character that has all this. You know, has a council of Kangs and an Immortus and a pharaoh and
I do think that there is a possibility to bring him back.
Yeah, I do think he'll be mentioned again. Like, my theory is that they'll wrap up whatever is going on with Kang, like
in Doomsday.
You know, I think it will. Yeah, it'll wrap up in Doomsday, but it won't be like anywhere major to a near plot point. So,
yeah, I know I've seen a bunch of fans being like, yeah, and Doom's gonna like kill Kang and Doomsday and it'll be really cool. And I'm like, sure, fine. Yeah. I don't really need it, but sure.
Right.
If you guys need that loop to be closed, I mean, to me, it's already closed technically. So
you think Loki season 2 kind of wraps it up in a sense?
I think so. I don't think you need it.
I think like there's a lot of end credit scenes from the MCU that I think there are like really big loose ends that I don't think they're going to address all of them. So you could just have this be another forgotten uncanon MCU post credit scene.
This is what maybe this, you know, in like in Infinity War where they mentioned that what is the planet that all of the Nova Corps was on? Xandar.
Xandar. Mm-hmm.
So like, you know how they mentioned like, yeah, no, Thanos wiped out Xandar.
Yeah.
I think like just like a
agreed, totally agreed.
Like just a mention of like
a couple of sentences.
There,
right.
You know, there was a bunch of looking people, and I
Doom
killed
could
them
just
all
be like, yeah, Doom could, like literally come out and say to everyone, oh yeah, that guy, I wiped him off the face of, the universe, and I took his council idea. I don't know, I don't know, like obviously more intimidating like than that, but like you could basically say that and just everyone would be like, oh, okay, yeah. Doomsday is a bigger threat. So,
but it just like doesn't even seem like anybody would even be like, who's Kang? Like the only person I would know of a Kang would be Scott Lang.
Scott Lang, correct.
Ant-Man.
Yeah. I know who Ant-Man is. But I don't. Like you're right. It's really just Sylvie's still out there, and from what I hear, she might be a decent part of Avengers Doomsday, but I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think the last thing we wanted to talk about Marvel related was we got a big report this week about James Spader returning as Ultron in the new Vision Quest series that'll be coming out in 2026.
Yeah.
We also got somewhat of a rumor report. You described it as like a Reddit source.
It was a Reddit source
that
it was from Marvel Studios Spoilers Reddit.
Right.
Back in March of 2023.
Right. But the articles that came out, I think, were in July when SDCC dropped that were kind of, talking about this, and that Ultron might also be returning for the Armor Wars movie. I mean, honestly, based off of the Vision Quest thing, I could believe it, sure. But yes, it is not a great source that's from. But I think it's a good move, honestly. I from what I know, like all of Ultron has to be like destroyed for him to not return. And I think we saw his head in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, I don't know if you remember, but he had like Peter was on the invisible jet, and he was like rummaging through stuff, and he pulled out like the Ultron head. So I think that's a cool little like thread to kind of pick up off there. I really love that scene between Vision and Ultron at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
Where basically Vision kills him, right? And it's genuinely one of the best scenes in that movie. And I really like Age of Ultron. I think I like it more than the original Avengers. That's maybe a hot take, but I think, yes, Ultron's not a perfectly written adaptation of the character, but I like James Spader as the voice actor for him.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he's coming back as I can't remember if he played Ultron in the What If series already, but I know he's coming back. Okay, yeah. Well, he is coming back for like the new season.
Really? Okay, that's cool.
And so it seems like Marvel's, going back in a little bit of an Ultron direction, which I have been wanting because I think that Ultron is a character that like deserve to have a bit more to do in the MCU than just the one movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, too, like they titled it Age of Ultron, and it wasn't an Age of Ultron. It was like a few weeks at the most. I mean, at the most.
At the most. A few weeks.
So, like, I would like an Age of Ultron, honestly. That would have been cool.
Yeah. But I think the way that I at least imagine this going is, look, I don't know if he moves anywhere past Vision Quest. I really don't, because in my head I'm like, yeah, maybe in the self-discovery of White Vision,
right,
he'll be having some sort of hallucinatory, or like in his mind, since it is still comprised of like Tony Stark and Jarvis and Ultron, like he'll be having some sort of conversation with a Ultron voice, or we'll see like see a figure of like Ultron, and he'll be like talking to him, like almost like a Superman and Jor-El sort of situation.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
And maybe that would culminate into like Ultron eventually like tricking him into like making him like a like physical presence again, and maybe, moving forward. But I don't know. I do like the idea that we'll get to see more. I would hope that if they're gonna bring back, look, it might be a very minor role that we might just be like, oh yeah, that would be cool. You know?
Like maybe it's just a flashback, right?
Because you know, like you said, that was one of the best scenes from that movie, and I think everybody has talked about like wanting to have more of that dialogue between the two of them.
For sure, for sure.
But you know, I do think that like somebody like Ultron, it would be kind of cool to have him stick around in the MCU.
And obviously he won't be the big bad. I mean, that's gonna be Doctor Doom. But like, if he shows up in a couple of like more grounded superhero kind of like Vision Quest, maybe it's not that grounded, but like Armor Wars, I believe will be. And I think if you have him kind of on that side of the MCU, you know, not as a huge threat, but somebody who has a presence, I think it'd be cool. I think also, like to your point, I would love to see like Vision or Ultron also be like a presence in Vision's mind, you know? And I think you could do it. Like if you've seen The Boys season 4, and spoilers if you haven't, but you know, Billy is like going insane in that season, and basically he's got his wife that he's hallucinating, which is like the good side of him, and then he's got his old like war veteran, like, you know, agent friend that he's also hallucinating, that's basically the bad side of Billy. And I think you could do something in that sense to where you have Ultron in his head kind of influencing him badly. But, you know, and you know, where I'm going with this, we also saw the report that Elizabeth Olsen might return as Scarlet Witch in this series. So she could then be the, you know, like the Billy's wife, the good version of Vision, and kind of him kind of losing it, going back and forth. It would be really interesting too for this being who's looked at as like this perfect kind of, you know, being. You know, he's not a human. He can think obviously way more. I don't want to say fast, but he's got obviously a brighter mind, a more intelligent mind than most humans. I think it would be very interesting to see him kind of lose it in a sense.
Yeah. But overall, I think it's really cool because I do like that portrayal that James Spader did. I think this show's got a lot of potential. I was already excited from the end of like WandaVision because I love that scene between the two visions and their philosophical like conversation. I think we're gonna get more of that kind of stuff because I think I'm not alone in that and liking that. I think a lot of people were happy with that part of the finale. Yeah, and so you have that and the Vision Ultron scene. You know, take influence from that, put it into this show. You get James Spader back. You get Elizabeth Olsen back. This is a knockout one. I mean, I'm excited. Could
be. Yeah. And it's only 5 years after WandaVision comes out. No big deal. But yeah. I'm excited. Yeah.
I'm excited too.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for our topics this week. I don't know if you've watched anything in this past week that you want to talk about.
Well, I did watch Aliens.
Nice.
Which
it's a really good one. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd never seen it before. I'd only seen
it's been quite a while.
And Aliens. And because I wanted to watch at least Aliens before I saw Alien Romulus, which I might see later today. We'll see.
Okay.
That's a hell of a movie. What the fuck? I was really surprised at the amount of like pop cultural things that I've just grew up knowing. that were in that movie. And I was like, oh, that's where that came from? Like the hand thing?
Yeah. I love that.
I was like, I had no idea that like that's where that was from. And I feel like I keep realizing that there's all these James Cameron movies that have all these pop cultural like lines that I just didn't know that I was from a James Cameron movie, which is kind of crazy.
I honestly didn't know that was a James Cameron movie until recently, which is so funny. I actually thought Ridley Scott had done that one as well. So
yeah, and I mean, it was honestly like it was a perfect follow up to Alien, because you could have done another like more horror based follow up to Alien. And I mean, I think Alien.
I think this is a little more action based, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's totally like way more of an action movie, and that's what was like really cool about it was it still had horror to it, but it was way more of like a mother-daughter, two moms fighting, and like war movie that really made like it really took the emphasis off of the like just it upped the stakes of like, oh my god, if there was like a horde of aliens, like that'd be terrifying. But it didn't make like just one of them terrifying. It made like a whole collective of them, and it kind of like, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that they turned it into like a bit of a war, like like special ops sort of story, but then also made it like this emotional sort of thing between like Ripley and Newt, and I enjoyed that, and it was just it was done so well. I am really excited to see the Alien Romulus, because I think that one's like even more horror than the original. I heard there's like a scene that's like insanely disturbing in Romulus. Like a scene that they like the actors in the movie had to like look away from. So. I don't know. I have a bit of an eye roll with that shit because like the just recently with like Long Legs, they were saying like, oh my god, and this is the heartbeat of like this. We monitored the heartbeat of the main character when she got to see Nicolas Cage's Long Legs for the first time. I was like, look, he looked creepy, but like, come on, but it wasn't like I'm terrified.
It's not like this is real, right? So like I'm like, if they want to like, because I've already seen like the scene from Alien Romulus. I'm like, all right, well, you've seen it already? Okay. No, but they're like, like this is people's reaction to the scene from Alien Romulus, right. And I'm like, okay, I mean, you're gonna get people to be like, okay, well, I gotta know what people are talking about, right? But like, for sure, I'm not expecting. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe next week I talk about like, okay, well, like, they weren't lying. That was insane, right? I'm curious. Yeah. And then I rewatched Infinity War. Nice. I'm gonna watch Endgame, and I used to say, oh yeah, Infinity War is better than Endgame. After watching Infinity War, it really is. Besides maybe a moment or two, it really is just straight up and like just people yelling and fighting and like a race against the clock. And it's just all it is just like a bunch of like, let's go do this thing to do this thing to do this thing, and we're gonna fight and there's not really a lot of like emotion or like really a story. It's just like it's just like a race against the clock, like you said. It's why I really love. Sorry, go on. Well, I was just gonna say, and then when I think about all the stuff that happens in Endgame, it was like Endgame is an actual like not that Infinity War isn't an actual movie, but Endgame's an actual like true story being. But they told. Have like in Endgame they have a goal in mind, and like they take a while to like figure out how to achieve that goal, and there's a core group again that is trying to save the entire world and their friends. And I don't know, like, it's moments like where like Captain America's like in a anonymous, like survivors group, and then he's talking to Natasha. He's like, I saw whales in the East Bay. Yeah, like there's a lot of emotion in Endgame, and I'm not saying there isn't any in Infinity War, and I do really like Infinity War.
Yeah,
but for me, Endgame, yeah, it just has a better emotional core, a better journey, I think, and it has one of the best finales ever to a movie. I've well, at least a superhero movie I've ever seen. So, yeah.
So I'm fairly certain that like now I'm probably of the opinion, like I'm like, yeah, Infinity War is like super fun. Like it's a great time, but it's not when you look at it, it's like, yeah, that was just straight up like comic book, like just not fan service, but like that's just like everything that you could want as like a fan. But
sure.
But like you're not really getting a story as much. Like you're just like really entertained for like 2.5 hours,
which isn't a bad thing.
Which is not a bad thing, but I think there's things about Endgame that I like better.
For sure.
Yeah.
They take some really big risks with Endgame too, which I think pans off. Or pans out. Yeah. So that's all you watched?
Yeah, and then I told you earlier before the podcast about the Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy Gang documentary on Netflix, which is great. Yeah,
we'll definitely check that out. Well, I guess I'm a little boring here. I just kept watching Ted Lasso, so I have almost finished season 2. And I don't know if you heard, but like Ted Lasso ended with like 3 seasons, and that was like they were very adamant that like that's all they needed, that's all they wanted. Like, and it like the series wrapped up in 3 seasons. Yesterday, as of recording this, they announced that they're going to be doing a season 4, and that they will be opening up the writer's room for it soon. And I'm like, do you not have like a solid idea, or are you like, I really hope that they have a story they want to tell in mind, and that they're not just like being kind of forced with money by Apple, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's from an outside perspective, that is what it seems like it is.
Right. So I'm a little worried. But you know, season 2 in general has been really good. Not as good as season 1 for me. There's some really odd storylines, I think, in season 2 that I hope pan out. I have 4 more episodes to go in season 2. I hope it pans out by the end of this season, but otherwise, I think most of season 2 is pretty great. I would still heavily recommend. Don't want to give too many spoilers in case you ever watch it, but yeah, really enjoying it. Can't wait to finish it.
Nice.
But yeah, that's all I've been watching. I've just been on Ted Lasso kick. So, but yeah, again, as we always say at the end of our podcast, we appreciate you watching. And actually, I want to shout out my man Zack here. Made a song that I'm really in love with, and it's called "Deadbeat Love." And I just wanted to shout it out for you because it's really cool, and I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. If anybody wants to check it out, Ian said the song is called "Deadbeat Love." Artist name is Corduroy, and it's on every streaming service that I'm aware of, and I think it's on YouTube as like a topic. It's on YouTube Music, so
nice. Check
it out.
Absolutely,
I worked really hard on it, so thanks. Thanks, Ian.
Of course. But yeah, so again, thank you for watching and listening. We like to release our podcasts on Monday mornings and then clips on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. If you want to follow us on our social medias, links to those in the description below. And if you want to give us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, or subscribe, we'd always appreciate it.
And as always, until next time.